Welcome to this week's episode of the Inside Kingston podcast, where experienced professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders based in Kingston upon Thames are invited on to share their story with us. I'm your host, Amir Rocha Lima.
This week's episode of the Inside Kingston podcast is brought to you by Holland Harlan Wills, a financial planning and wealth management firm based in Kingston upon Thames. Holland Harlan Wills specialises in retirement planning for senior professionals and successful business owners. Visit hhw-uk.com to start feeling more relaxed and confident about your financial future.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Inside Kingston podcast. I'm joined today by Alida Ballard. Alida is an accountant and the owner of Surrey Accountancy Services, an accountancy practice that has been supporting UK startups and small businesses for over 10 years. Alida is also the creator of SAS Business Box, an online service that gives business owners access to over 200 articles, videos, templates, checklists, and tools to help them successfully run their business. What's unique about Alida is how she uses analogies and common sense language in lieu of dry accountancy jargon to get to the heart of the issues that affects business owners. So whether you're interested in starting your own business or would perhaps like to change the current relationship you have with your business numbers, then I hope you enjoy this episode of the Inside Kingston podcast. Welcome, Alida Ballard, to the Inside Kingston podcast. I'm really excited about this conversation, Alida, because in your capacity as an accountant, you must see a lot of positive and also negative scenarios inside small and medium-sized businesses, which I'm sure our listeners can learn a lot from. But to kick off this conversation, I'd like to go back in time, if that's okay.
Sure.
So where did you grow up?
So I was actually born in England, but my father is Singaporean, and my mum is English. When I was 6 weeks old, we went back to live in Singapore until I was just before I turned 12, and then we came back to England.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And what did you study at university?
My degree was actually psychology and human biology. Originally, I wanted to be a doctor. Always really want to just help people. Did the degree, realized I like numbers and people. And so an accountant seemed to be the natural progression.
Indeed. And how did you get into accountancy?
It's ACCA, so it's certified accountant as opposed to a chartered accountant, which meant that I got a lot of experience. One of my first jobs where I did most of my training was for a pharmaceutical marketing company.
Mm. And then from that up until this point where you own your own business, what sort of prompted you to start your own business, Alida?
So it goes back actually to my dad. So in 1983, my dad is a serial entrepreneur. And in 1983, he started up another business. And that was a double glazing firm in Kent. So they had a showroom, a factory, 8 members of staff, 4 teams of self-employed fitters, 2 in each team, and a couple of sales guys. By 1986, they had a turnover of just over £1 million and making a profit, which was really great. Mm. It was all working really well. So my dad decided to do what a lot of business owners do. I've been an accountant for more than 25 years now. So he decided to take on 2 more sales guys and lease company cars for the sales team. And he fell into the cash outlay trap, as I call it, that a lot of entrepreneurs get into, in that he knew that it was going to cost him more money, obviously, to take on additional overheads, but didn't work out how much more the business needed to sell in order to keep protecting the net profit that he needed. So that's all based around gross margins, and based on his company gross margin, for every £1,000 of additional cost, they needed to turn over an extra £2,857. Now they didn't. They turned over more, but not enough more. So he used cash reserves and borrowed some money. And actually in 1987, when the stock market crash happened, we lost everything, including our home.
Oh, wow.
So we had a lovely big house in Kent, Inglewood fireplace, all that type of stuff. And I was 18 at the time, going off to do my degree. But my younger brother and sister were both in private education, so that had to change virtually overnight. And I do remember driving with my dad to spend time with him from Kent, where the house was, to Bow Road in London, where the business bank branch was, with envelopes, of cash and checks to put in the overnight safety deposit box so that he could trade for one more day.
Wow.
So a very painful experience of the realities of business and not making enough money, basically. And of course, nowadays, nobody has to know that you've got a problem, because you're just looking at your online bank account on your phone or your laptop or whatever it is. And so, that's where the passion came from, really, to help business owners understand and get close to their numbers so they can make better decisions and not put themselves in the position that my dad found himself in. And of course, it's really easy to borrow money nowadays, both personally as well as via your business. I meet, a lot of new businesses as well as existing businesses who all have the great intention at the beginning to squirrel away the tax. And because they then don't make enough money, they think, oh, okay, I can just use up that tax money because I'll have time to top it back up when it's needed. And of course, because they don't actually know how much they need to sell, they don't make enough money, and so they don't sort of make it up, and that's when the vicious cycle of running the business based on the next tax bill, so hoping that a client pays on time so that you can meet that deadline. And of course, if you're running a business like that, it means you're definitely not making enough money, and it's a very stressful, very, very stressful situation to be in. And that's where my passion comes from, to help people get the power to understand how to do it differently, and then get the help if they need it to make it happen.
That's really, really inspirational, Alida. And there's so much in that story that I want to unpack.
Okay.
I think you said before that, with a lot of accountants, you meet them once a year, they keep you legal for another year, but they don't really help you drive your business forward. So in your view, what should be the role of an accountant in a business?
Yeah, well, in my view, it's actually a very responsible position, because business owners are so attached to their businesses. It's like having another baby, and a bit like when you have a baby, the only thing they tell you about is actually the birth, but nothing about how to actually bring it up. And it's the same in business. And in business, a bit like when you have a child and you have to go to parents' evenings or go and get their checkups to see how they're doing. Unless something goes wrong or somebody tells you that there might be a problem, you don't know there's a problem until it becomes really, really painful. And that's the same in business. And when you are sharing your numbers, which is a vulnerable thing because numbers don't lie, I think it's a responsibility of financial professionals, accountants, bookkeepers, to actually show or help business owners see what's actually happening, encourage them to actually have a relationship with their numbers, because they can do something about it when there's a small problem rather than a very large one. It's a bit like putting on weight. It creeps up on you, and eventually you get on the scales and you're quite shocked that actually you're 2 stone overweight, where you thought you were actually 1 stone overweight. And those sort of checking in points are your annual accounts or monthly bookkeeping information, whatever your relationship with your numbers is. And unless somebody makes it easy to understand what is being said by getting on the scales as such, you're more likely to ignore it and choose to buy bigger clothes. As opposed to going, okay, what do I need to do? How do I make it so that I reverse this trend and make it so that it's a more comfortable situation, and I know what I need to do? And I think that's what is missing.
With this in mind, Alida, could you tell us about the concept behind your business, SAS Business Box?
Surrey Accountancy Services, we do offer a bookkeeping service where we try very hard to show the business as I've just described it, where you actually get a proper view of cost of sale. And one of the things that I've been doing is I provide a focus service, and that's more one-to-one, working with business owners to help them using their existing numbers as well as projected numbers to go, okay, how much do you need from your business? We'll use the numbers that are true for you and your business and your plans, future plans, and your selling price and cost of sale to work out how much you need to sell. So it's a bottom-up approach.
Gotcha.
Where most things that you can get online or existing, then they will look at what can I sell something for, and then work down through cost of sales, fixed costs, squirrel away the tax, and you hope you've got enough left over to live on. Our approach is to go from what do you want to be living on, what do you need, and then we'll calculate the tax that would be due on your profits and work out your sales targets based on that. And if those sales targets are too high, then we'll look to see where we can benefit that or make changes so that that's more realistic a target. So with that in mind, I decided that I wanted to help as many people as I can because the happier the world is, the more successful people are, it's going to create a much happier environment for everybody to be in. So the SAS Business Box came and it was actually launched last year. It's got over 200 articles, videos, downloadable checklists, templates and tools. But the most powerful tool on the box is the revenue target calculator, which is basically our focus service in a 5-step process.
Okay.
So the member just puts in how much they need at the end of every month to take out the business. They just tell it whether they're a sole trader or limited company so that the tool can work out the tax that we do on the profits, put in the fixed costs, put in the revenue streams and how much each one contributes to your business. So say, for example, you're an interior designer and 80% of your income comes from your consultancy and 20% comes from selling soft furnishings. You put that in there. The next step is you put in your cost of sale and a selling price or cost of sale and a markup. Click a button and the RTC will tell you how much you need to turn over as a business as a whole, as well as per revenue stream, so that you know how, as long as you hit those targets, and it'll show you how much tax you would have to pay on the profit that you generate. And as long as you do that, and obviously you get the money in because it's not a cash flow, then you're safe to take out the money you need every month.
Alida, it seems to me that you've taken quite a bit from the traditional accountancy service and you've translated it into 2019 with an online service that encompasses not only training videos, educational articles, but also tools and calculators that people can use themselves. Could you tell me a little bit about where you see your profession going, but also how perhaps other business owners should be thinking about future-proofing their own businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping and trusting that my approach and my attitude to the power and knowledge that we can give business owners by encouraging them to have a relationship with their numbers will be embraced by more and more people. So I try very hard to go and talk to as many young professionals as possible. So Kingston Business School, for example, Young Enterprise, all that type of stuff, to try and encourage people. I do a lot of the talks, encouraging the business owners in the rooms to speak to their accountants and ask for this view, this service, so that they can encourage it. I'm not exactly sure, without people being aware that there's another way of looking at it and being exposed to how easy it is to understand, it's not going to come from in the industry, is my belief. If you look at the accounting software that's available now, it's all been, a lot of it anyway, there's been written and generated for the end user, being trained accountants and bookkeepers.
Which goes back to your point, right, Alida, of offering a service, a professional service that goes far beyond from just either reporting numbers in your world or in my world, just putting together a portfolio for a client. It seems to me that there's a theme amongst the folks I've interviewed so far. And that is that if you're a small and medium-sized business, doubling down on the human aspect of things and really sitting on the same side of the table as your client and holding their hand and working through their numbers with them, that seems to be the way forward.
Absolutely.
So when I think about this and I think about my clients who are successful business owners, there seems to be some key things amongst them, independent of the sector in which they operate in. So for the benefit of our listeners, because of course you have seen a lot more business owners than I will ever see, would you mind breaking down, in your opinion, some of the building blocks that people should be thinking about before they start their own business?
Okay, well, I suppose, one of the first things is to make sure that whatever it is you want to sell actually solves a problem that exists. In terms of understanding who your target market is, understanding that what you are delivering is what they want to buy, and how you're going to deliver it is the way they want it. And then, making sure you deliver your message in the right place. So what I would say is one of the fundamental big building blocks of a business, once you've identified who your market is, and that what you're selling is what they actually want, and it solves a problem that is existing in your market's arena, then make sure that the message that you write or say is one that resonates with your market. But the last one is the most important bit, is making sure that you are spreading your words in the right places. Otherwise, nobody's going to know about you. That I think is fundamental, one of the fundamentals. A second one is, again, it's going to go back to what I was saying, in that you need to understand how much you need to sell based on what you need to take out of your business. Understanding the relationship between your gross margin and your cost of sale, all of that, because once you know what that is, you can then decide how you run your business, and you can decide whether you put your prices up or get a cheaper cost of sale or reduce your fixed costs, all of those things which will then protect how much money you need to be left with. Without knowing what you should be selling, you're starting blind. I meet a lot of people, when I say to them, how do you work out your pricing? They go, oh, well, it just seems like it's going to be the right amount. Okay, well, do you know how much you need to sell to make sure that you're making enough money? No, not really. And that's quite a big problem. Without knowing what you should be selling, without understanding the impact of making a decision which increases your overheads, or in agreement to having a higher cost of sale, you won't necessarily know whether you're making enough money. And without making enough money, you'll very easily fall into the trap of robbing Peter to pay Paul, because you just aren't making enough. So you're constantly in this vicious cycle of waiting for some more money to come in, waiting for cash to come in. And people talk about cash being king, and that's only true if you're making enough money. Because if you're not, then it doesn't matter. All that means is that you're just waiting for the money to come in to pay the next bill, and you're delaying paying somebody, or delaying taking out money for yourself, or borrowing money. It becomes a very painful situation to be in. So once you understand those two fundamentals, you're making sure that your customer is the right customer, that you can deliver what they want in the way they want it, and you can tell them about it in the right places, and you know exactly how much you need to sell to protect your interest in the business, which is the net profit that you need. The rest of it, you can get help with sort of the nuts and bolts of marketing or PR or sales if sales isn't your strength. But it's identifying those two key things, and getting those two key things right, in my opinion, is what makes a business successful.
Your story there took me back to when we first met, which was at an event at the Kingston Business School. We were both presenting to final year finance and accountancy students on career paths in our respective professions. And I remember at the time telling you that I was struck by how different your presentation was to that of a typical accountant. Could you tell us a little bit about that presentation?
Yeah, sure. So I first did this, probably about 14 years ago. And it's basically a jug of water, 3 coloured tumblers, and a champagne flute. And I use them to help business owners to see how the numbers fit together. Basically, The pink tumbler is cost of sales, and the blue tumbler is fixed cost, green is tax. And it's all about making sure that you've got enough in your champagne flute to be able to live your life. So, and a lot of people, the light bulbs go off in the room when I do the presentation. And it's just a very simple way of helping people understand where the various figures fit into their business and the importance of putting it in the right places and being honest with yourself.
Alida, do you remember the point in your career where it dawned on you that if you could transform accountancy lingo into analogies that people could associate with quicker, you would be able to make more of an impact with your message? Do you remember what prompted you to start thinking of your profession in analogies and in common sense language like this?
I do, actually. It was my very, very first focus client. I didn't know that I've always had an innate ability to explain things and see bigger pictures in every aspect of life. But one of my first focus clients, it was a lady called Nikki. It was print management. So she didn't actually do the printing. Clients would come to her with a print requirement. She would find the right print supplier and take a fee from it. And we used to, when I first met her, it was a networking event, and she'd stand up and go, "Hi, I'm Nikki from somebody else's business." And I then had a one-to-one with her and said, "Okay, it'd be interesting to find out why it is you do that, because you're basically selling for this other company." Because the other company would have the relationship with the customers, the company would have the relationship with the suppliers, and the other company would take a cut as a cost of sale, basically, and then give Nikki the balance. Now, Nikki would then be left with 32% of what she sold. So I was able to paint the pictures of the fact that she wasn't showing a true reflection of how well she was doing in her business. So instead of showing £100 of sales, she was showing £32 of sales. And it was all about confidence. It was all about understanding that she didn't need to rely on somebody else because that person had been going on business for 2 more years. So we started working together. Within a year, she had increased her gross margin from 32 to 35%. And on a 250 grand turnover, that was quite a lot more. And she used to work from home. So she rang me up one day and said, "Oh, I've got this opportunity to go to a conference where there's going to be potentially some very customers with big budgets. I really fancy going to it." I went, "Okay, well, how much was it to go?" She said, "Oh, it was £1,000. And in her mind, she thought that was okay. I said, "Okay, well, based on your gross margin, I know you need to sell £3,000 to be able to afford to go and pay that £1,000 so that you're still protecting the profit that you always make." Oh, I hadn't thought about that. And the other thing I said, "Okay, well, on the basis that these potential customers are from larger businesses, they will have procurement departments that will require your business to have certain criteria." And at that stage, her business was only 2 years old. So, the picture is you are, even if they wanted to buy from you, their procurement departments will not say yes. So it was all the ability to sort of see the bigger picture, paint the pictures, not necessarily through analogies, but with a different view of, okay, that decision means that. And it helped her to see it in a different way.
And I think there's a lesson there for all of us, which is, if you're getting those sort of reactions from your clients and from people who are watching your presentations, when it comes down to accountancy, which is typically seen as a fairly dry subject, there's heaps that folks can do out there in all sorts of businesses to make sure that whoever's hearing their message can relate to it in a lot more of an easier, common sense, simple to understand way. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. If we switch gears slightly, I know that giving something back to the community is something that you're passionate about. Could you tell us about some of the things that you're involved in on this front?
Well, yeah, I helped with Young Enterprise. I did my first year there, which I absolutely loved. And it was a little bit challenging at the beginning because I think the girls, so there were year 10 kids. There were 6 of them, and it went down to 3 within a couple of months. But the 3 girls that were still there decided to stay. And I was very passionate about ensuring that they understood how the numbers fit. And I said, look, what we need to do is, how much do you want to make? How much net profit do you want? And just kept going back to what the numbers were saying, looking at what other people in the various young enterprise groups were doing. They set themselves the target of having a net profit of £300. And they learned a lot about their own resilience, about making sure they keep checking back in as to whether their decisions will make sense in terms of contributing to the net profit. And by the end of the year, they got £298 of net profit. They got through to they just missed the national finals of Young Enterprise. But what was one of the best things that I read was in their annual report, they mentioned that their business advisor, being me, one of the things I said at the beginning was, first you learn, then you drop the L. And it really resonated with them.
That's fantastic, Alida. That's really
So I'm going to be doing Young Enterprise again. I help with Kingston University. There's a thing called Beyond Barriers, which is about helping. Everything is about confidence. Everything is about believing that you can make a difference to how you experience your life. So I like helping people in that way, and also part of the business readiness, which is the thing that you and I met at Kingston Uni, to just try and influence and paint different pictures, show different lights. And I also have a bigger plan for the future.
okay.
So SAS, so Surrey Accountancy Services, that's bread and butter. But the money that gets generated from the box, I want to be able to, let me backtrack a little bit. So my parents got divorced when I was 12. And unfortunately, my children were 10 and 13 when I got divorced. And when parents get divorced, you don't just lose those 2 adults. You potentially lose the other adults that you had in your life, and they're all trying to work out how to have a relationship going forward. And unless you're a child that actually causes any trouble, everybody thinks you're okay. Nowadays, there is a lot of pressure online. There's a lot of pressure through social media. There's very few places for people to actually go. So I want to, in the future, create SAS youth clubs, where the kids are the center of the whole thing, that they are the most important person. There will be, consistent adults there to help them, guide them. They'll cover we will cover things like good nutrition, good exercise, the importance of all that, basic life skills like changing a plug and things like that. But I'd want to encourage and invite people from the local community to come and share their stories, because I don't think children nowadays spend enough time talking to other people and hearing their life experiences. And we'll also do an amended version of the revenue target calculator, where the child can put in how much, what type of house they want, what type of car, holidays, that type of thing. And the amended RTC will show them how much they need, or rather what type of salary they need to command to be able to have that type of lifestyle. Then what type of jobs will create that type of salary, and what type of qualifications will give you those types of jobs. So a big picture of encouraging kids to be able to take ownership of their own decisions, much like what I do with SAS and the box. It's about empowering and knowledge and encouragement and making it as easy as possible. And we'll also we'll give the children credits for, attending various things, for keeping on going, all that type of stuff. And they can spend those on things like football matches and PGL holidays. But that's where the revenue from the box will pay for that type of thing, because I know there are lots of incentives up and down the country, but they all depend on grant, on sort of government funding and things like that. Whereas I want to create an ability to make a difference to the next generation. So it's the same idea, both in the accountancy world as well as in the youth club thing. It's all about empowerment, knowledge, taking ownership, for your own decisions, accepting that sometimes you'll get things wrong, but that's okay. Just pick yourself back up and go back out and do it again. So that's sort of the bigger plan. But I feel very passionately that unless we do something to give people back their power and to explain and show how easy it is, and it's not daunting, it's not scary, it's okay if you get it wrong, but as long as you know and you're proactive in your life, then different things can happen. And so that's the big the big passion and the big thing that I'd like to do.
Alida, what next for you and your business? Are there any projects in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Right now, I just want to spread the word more about the box. I want to help as many businesses as I can. I want to spread the idea that it's okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to realize how big your problem is and then ask for help. In 2015, there were 4.1 million solopreneurs. Every day, there's about 2,500 startups a day. The statistics of failure is not changing. Last week, I met up with a couple of ladies from one of the high street banks, and they explained that actually they were one of the last banks to step away from providing support, like bank manager support, to businesses that turn over less than $500,000. Now, there's a lot of people who are not getting help because it's not cost effective, because they're too small. My passion is to, it's all of those people where it's not difficult. It can be done. It's easy to explain. The more people who get to see the video of the jug of water, who get it, the more people who talk about it. That's my goal for the next few years, really, to try and generate as much noise around realizing there's a different way. It doesn't have to be the way it's always been. It can be different, and it's not difficult. It just requires a little bit of courage to look at it differently and accept that the behavior will have to change, but you're going to have to do it to get a different result.
The message there, Alida, seems to be do well by doing good. And, all of us small and medium-sized business owners, in our own way, in our own local communities, we can do some good, and that will inevitably help us do well. So, thank you for that. Yeah. As we start to wrap up, I'd like to ask you a few quick-fire questions that our listeners are always interested in. So, What do you do to relax outside of the office?
I love going for walks. My favorite place to go is Virginia Water. As soon as I walk through the gates, that's it. I'm completely relaxed. I love playing badminton, and I love cooking. My children always tell me I cook enough for the whole neighborhood. I love cooking and eating, hence I have to go to the gym.
Excellent. Who are some of the people you admire and why?
There's one particular or two particular people I admire the most, and they are my children. My daughter in particular has had a very rough ride for the last 6 or 7 years. And she's the best woman I know. Always picks herself back up and goes for it. My son is the other person, because he has shown who he is by being the best person he can be, regardless of what's been going on. And that takes a lot of strength and courage to just still decide to keep going. So, yeah.
Is there a book that you've recently read that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, there's a very good book called The Chimp Paradox. And it's basically around, in very brief summary, we all have a chimp in us, we all have the human in us, and we all have our computers. And the chimp in us will always be the first to react, and then go into the computer and justify our reactions. The human in us will come across a situation and instead of reacting, it will go into the computer and go, well, what happened last time? How do I change the way I behave so I have a different outcome? And it's a really interesting book and really helpful, because when confronted with an uncomfortable situation, generally the chimp comes out first. If you are talking to somebody or interacting with somebody in business, outside of work, whatever it is, and you are both being chimps, nothing is going to happen that is going to be good other than, inflaming a difficult situation. So one of you has to become the human to basically put some water on the fire. So it's actually a really interesting book to drill down into recognizing for yourself when you are being a chimp and when you need to bring the human in you, because the more you do that, the more able you are to have a better resolution to whatever challenging situation you find yourself in.
Is there a movie or a TV series that you've recently watched that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yes, there's a series on Netflix called White Collar. Very clever, really clever. So there's two main characters. One's an FBI agent. The other one was in prison for fraud, but all to do with paintings and things like that. And it was so addictive. There were 6 series, and I think I took, I don't know, a month to watch it all. It was one of those of every night of watching as many episodes, and I think there were 25 episodes per series at 40 minutes each episode. So it was a commitment, but it was so good. It was so very clever, very, getting to know the human beings involved, as well as the white collar crime and all that. It was really good, really enjoyable.
Finally, where can people go to find out more about you and your business?
Okay, so by my name, really, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, it's Alida Ballard. It's SAS Business Box. So if you Google that, you'll be able to see more details about the business box. Contact me if you want to find out more about SAS as a whole in terms of the bookkeeping and accountancy and focus service that we deliver, or anything else, really, anything I can help anybody with.
That's brilliant, Alida. And I'll make sure I put those links in the show notes too. Alida, thank you for joining us here on the Inside Kingston podcast. It's been a pleasure getting to know your story.
Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of the Inside Kingston podcast. Make sure to check out our guests' website, pay them a visit, and help spread the word about what they're doing. If you have any questions or know someone who should be a guest on the show, please feel free to get in touch. I would also love it if you could go to iTunes and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. We work hard to bring on some great guests, and getting a review from you is one way to help the podcast rate well on iTunes so that others can find and enjoy the show too. Thanks for listening.